So, missiles and bombs have a warhead, the thing that actually explodes, but a lot of people are still under the impression that this thing is, who knows, perhaps just a stick of dynamite that's inside, but actually it's something far more advanced, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. What I'm going to talk about today is PBX, plastic bonded explosive. Now, it's particularly advanced, and it's been used for a while now because it is so particularly advanced and particularly useful within missile systems. It's a type of explosive material, effectively, and as you can tell by the name, it is literally plastic bonded explosive. It's explosive powder integrated into sort of plastic long-chain polymers. Now, it consists of a high explosive, as I've said, and that's generally TNT or RDX, so those who think it's a big stick of dynamite aren't exactly wrong. But then that high explosive is bonded, really. So it is on a chemical level with this plastic binder. And this is really important, because unlike the TNT that you might see in films, this creates a really stable, easy to handle explosive that's resistant to pretty much everything. Shock, friction, moisture. PBX is really commonly used in a lot of military applications, warheads and that, military ordnance in general, but it's also used in commercial blasting for oil and gas expansion, so it's really, really useful if you want to make stuff stick. But it's not just one category. There are several types of PBX, sort of explosive bonding powders, and they have various different applications, and I think that's pretty important. I'm going to talk about it really in a British context today. And the ones I'm going to talk about today are PBX 9404, PBX 9501, and PBX 9707. Now, each of these bonding powders has really unique properties to make it suitable for different types of application. The thing that's common across all of them is primarily, again, they are bonded. They are to an extent adhesive. They can remain in place, meaning they're not moving around as any poorly packed powder would as a missile is maneuvering, throwing it off course. It can remain in place, which is hugely important. And additionally, of course, it is bonded by plastic. It is a long chain polymer, meaning it effectively sticks together. It's integral, meaning there's maximum outward explosion when eventually it does break apart. Now, PBX 9404, which is the first one I'm going to talk about, is high energy explosive, and this is pretty much the one that's used in a lot of military ordnance, missiles, bombs, that sort of thing. And it utilizes RDX, not TNT, as well as this plastic binder, long chain polymer plastic binder. Now, PBX 9404 has a high explosive yield, and it's designed to be stable under a variety of conditions, including stuff like shock and friction. It's generally designed to be easy to handle, so a lot of mass-produced munitions you will see utilizing PBX 9404, at least in a British context. Next, PBX 9502, or is it 9501? Anyway, it's a medium energy explosive, and it's not quite as potent in regard to explosive capability as 9404, but it's used in a lot of applications, not only military ordnance for smaller blast fragmentation warheads, but also commercial blasting. So it has non-military applications as well. And this, again, is also RDX and plastic binder. And it's particularly efficient for shock resistance. So if you see stuff that's being loaded onto planes, it might have a mix of certain PBX agents, but for commercial aspects of this powder, it has to withstand certain shock factors. Because if you are drilling somewhere, then there is going to be a certain amount of vibration, which is going to potentially damage a less stable explosive. Now, PBX 9501. So there's 9501 and 9502. 9501 it's more low energy, and it's used in quite a few applications. Now, of course, military ordnance is one of them, but it is more oil and gas exploration. And it utilizes plastic binder. Now, again, this is lower explosive, but it needs good shock resistance. And a lot of people ask me, if this is still used in military ordnance, what's the point? If you have 9404 and 9502, which differ in a certain degree, 9404 is slightly less stable and resistant to shock, and 9502 is slightly more resistant to shock but less explosive. Why would you want one that's less explosive and still resistant to shock if you can use 9502? And the answer is that it's not necessarily important to have high explosive factor in all scenarios. Sometimes stability is better, and the utilization of better, more stable, and often more adhesive long-chain polymers when utilizing PBX 9501 is often more useful. And of course, because it is lower explosive capability, it is more shock resistant to a far higher degree than 9502. Next, I've accidentally done 4 here. Next I'm going to talk about PBX 9707. Now PBX 9707 is another high energy one, like 9404. And it is used pretty much exclusively in military ordnance. Again, RDX plastic binder, but it is a high yield explosive, and it's more resistant to heat, as well as cold temperatures, which can often effectively break apart certain things because it is a longer chain polymer, meaning that when effectively it freezes, not only will it have still quite high explosive yield, but it's not going to fracture. It's not going to fracture under freezing. Now overall, PBX is actually really important, and I just thought I'd do a really short video on it, because not only does it have a lot of military and civilian applications, but it's actually meant that weapons can be mass-produced in a far more advanced setting. It means that machines can now make ordnance on a far larger level. It means that in an industrialized nation, there is the ability to utilize PBX to make munitions more stable, which means more efficient transport, which means lower potential to be disturbed by shot. So this is where we see the inert until activation explosives or ordnance that's used on stuff like brimstone. That means that if it's shot out of the sky, it's not going to blow up the entire plane that it's on with it. So effectively, it's logistically important, it's important in a manufacturing sense, and actually in an operational sense, PBX is really quite important. And beyond this, it's just a pretty incredible innovation to be able to utilize powder rather than just, or polymer bonded powder rather than just powder itself. So I think it's rather important. And again, it's resistant to shock, friction, moisture, and makes it easy to handle, and makes it pretty ideal for most explosive devices. So I think just clear up a bit of misinformation. It's not just one big TNT stick of Wiley Coyote dynamite. So I'll leave it there.